He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Kia ora and welcome to Elemental, a chemical adventure from RNZ. I'm Alison Ballance.
And I'm Allan Blackman from the Auckland University of Technology. And episode 84 of Elemental brings us to yet another element starting with the letter T, thallium. This name comes from the Greek thallos, meaning a green shoot or twig.
That sounds very environmentally lovely.
Sorry to disappoint, but the truth couldn't be more different.
Oh.
I know, we will hear all about this. Anyway, thallium was one of the first elements discovered using the newly invented spectroscope. If we hark back to the rubidium and cesium episodes, they were the first two. Thallium, I do believe, was one of the first after those. It was discovered in 1861 and it got its name about the green shoot or twig from the fact that when you looked at the spectrum of this particular element, you get a beautiful green line. So really it's nothing to do with twigs or shoots in the way that you're thinking of them.
It's a misnomer.
So, thallium, again, not a particularly well-known element, but if I were to say rat poison, that perhaps might ring some bells. Really, the bottom line of the element thallium is that pretty much all thallium compounds are highly toxic.
Oh. So what are the vital stats of toxic thallium then?
Okay, so elemental symbol TL, atomic number 81, again putting it towards the right of the periodic table and certainly towards the bottom. Harking back to those toxic thallium compounds, they're also nicely water-soluble, they're also odourless and tasteless, and that makes them perfect for bumping off people. And in fact, thallium compounds have been named the poisoner's poison. Now, for example, Caroline Grills was a 60-something Sydney grandmother, and she went and poisoned 4 family members with thallium-laced tea and cakes in the late 1940s, early 50s. And in fact, she got sentenced to death for this, which was commuted to life in prison, and apparently when she was in prison, they used to call her Aunt Thally. Well, I shouldn't really laugh, but yes. Anyway, a more famous thallium poisoner was the Englishman Graham Young. Now, he was jailed at the age of 15 for trying to poison family members with antimony compounds. He got released after 9 years, and then he went on to poison 7 more people with thallium, 2 of whom died.
God, he really did not like his family, did he?
Yeah, I know.
And before we get irate letters about putting ideas into people's heads, thallium used to be widely available as a rat poison and I think an insecticide, but it's now mostly banned or very restricted in use, which makes it much harder to find modern examples of these stories.
Indeed. I think Nixon, I believe, banned it in about 1970, 71, there or thereabouts. So, yes, so ever since then, things have been very different on the thallium front.
Begs the question, why is thallium so toxic?
Well, because it looks like potassium, believe it or not. So thallium lives in group 13 of the periodic table, and so we would expect it to form a thallium 3+ ion. However, for reasons that we need not go into here, it actually forms the thallium plus, or the thallium 1+ ion. And the thallium plus ion is almost exactly the same size as the K+ ion, the potassium ion. And so therefore it can take the place of K+, the potassium ion, in cells. Now, we have talked at quite some length on various episodes about the importance of the sodium-potassium pump, and the thallium plus ion disrupts this, causing a long and painful death. Now, it appears that the toxicity of thallium hasn't always been appreciated. So to illustrate this, it was actually used as a treatment for ringworm in its early days, as it made all the unfortunate patients' hair fall out, allowing easier treatment. And so hair loss is, in fact, the distinctive feature of thallium poisoning.
Yeah.
So, in fact, so much so that, get this, it was actually sold as a hair removal agent for a good 50 or so years. In the 1930s, you could, for example, buy a thing called Corymlu, a facial hair removal cream whose active agent was thallium acetate. So it was really no surprise that users lost not only the hair on their upper lip, but in fact hair from all over their body, and cases of paralysis were also reported. So yes, thallium compounds are very toxic indeed.
Point taken. Not nice.
No.
Is it treatable?
Yes, it is. If you get onto it early enough, it can be treated with activated charcoal and Prussian blue. Prussian blue is a compound of iron with, of all things, cyanide, which you might think is highly toxic, and treating somebody with that doesn't sound like it makes sense, but it does. It works beautifully. And in fact, the combination of these two things bind to the metal, and so it can be expelled.
Does it have any uses?
Well, again, like many of the elements that are toxic, not so many uses. So, obviously the uses are hampered by its toxicity. However, having said that, there are some uses of thallium compounds. They're used in infrared detectors. They're used in high refractive index glass. They're used in photoelectric cells and also low temperature thermometers. But again, not many other uses because all of these things are highly toxic.
Anything else to say about thallium before we finish?
Well, Alison, we have told a lot of stories on elemental, and I think that this is the absolute best one that we've managed to come across. Are you all sitting comfortably?
Yes.
Ready. So, it is a thallium story, so therefore it does involve poisoning. But believe it or not, this one's got a happy ending.
Oh, that's good to know in advance.
Indeed. So in 1977, two doctors at Hammersmith Hospital, London, were having great difficulty diagnosing a very ill 19-month-old girl. Now, one of the nurses in the ward was at the time reading an Agatha Christie novel by the name of The Pale Horse, in which one of the protagonists is poisoned by thallium. So she mentioned to the doctors that the girl's symptoms appeared very similar to those in the book. And so one urine sample and a thallium antidote later, the girl was cured, which is absolutely brilliant. However, there's more. I do like this. So the case was written up by the two doctors in the British Journal of Hospital Medicine, and the following acknowledgement appeared. And I quote, "We are indebted to the late Agatha Christie for her excellent and perceptive clinical descriptions, and to Nurse Maitland for keeping us up to date with the literature."
Oh, I love it. Thank you, Agatha Christie and Nurse Maitland. And you generally manage to cast even the most unlikely chemical in quite a positive light, Alan. But I do reckon this is one chemical element we wouldn't miss.
Well, despite that, if you're already missing thallium, you can catch this episode again, or you can find the entire Elemental back catalogue at rnz.co.nz/chemistry.
We are also out there in the big, wide podcast world. Find us where you usually listen. We're back next time with thorium. But until then, it's goodbye from me, Alison Balance.
And me, Allan Blackman. Mā te wā.